What's up, everybody? It's Frederick, and we are live once again for another edition of Power Lunch Podcast. I'm excited for the guest that we have here today. He's going to share some deep knowledge about how you can build your business scale, and if you're looking for more customers, how you can grow them and find them. If you are running a business, this is absolutely an episode you need to be paying attention to. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button over on YouTube. And if you're watching this live on Facebook or LinkedIn, drop a comment below. Drop us a question. Let us know how you're responding. We are once again live. It's Power Lunch Podcast. Here we go. What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Power Lunch Podcast. I'm super excited to have our guest for today, none other than Mr. Kasim Aslam. Kasim is one of the co-founders, or founder or co-founder, we'll find out the whole story, of Solutions 8, the top Google Ads agency in the country. No, can we say the world? Is that okay to say the world? The world. Absolutely. You're on mute, so now all your bragging is.
Oh, I was saying we could say the universe. Why stop at the world?
Hey, there you go. That's
right?
My type of thinking. All right. The universe is #1 Google Ads agency, and we're going to learn all about his story today. But first of all, I want to welcome Kasim to the show. Welcome to Power Lunch Podcast. How are you, Kasim?
I'm living the dream, man. I got to tell you, that was the most fire intro I've ever seen anybody put together. I don't know who did that for you, but that was amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. Top secret, built it in the lab. So
yeah, I figured it felt that way. Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, tell everybody a little bit about who you are, Kasim. Who are you, and where you're from, and what you do?
I'm the world's greatest failure. The way I like to bill myself. I own a Google Ads agency called Solutions 8, and we manage $54 million in ad spend. We have 200 clients. We're one of the top ranked ad agencies on the planet. And I like to say I'm the world's greatest failure because it actually comes from a keynote that Ryan Dice did at Traffic and Conversion, I think in 2017. In his keynote speech, he goes, 90% of all online ads fail. 90% of all online ads fail. And I actually think it's a little higher than that. I think he was being generous. But even if we're using 90%, I thought about that for a long time. And I'm like, man, all I do for a living is I just fail. I fail for other people. Maybe I fail effectively or fail efficiently or fail forward or however you want to characterize it. But there's so much truth to it. If you're going to run traffic, you are going to fail, and you have to get really comfortable with epic amounts of failure. And that's what I've gotten good at, man. It's just being a great failure.
I want to pull on that thread a little bit in a second, but first, tell everybody a little bit about your background. Where were you born, raised? What was it like growing up where you were, and how did that lead to the foundation of you becoming an entrepreneur? Because I'm always fascinated with people's origin stories, like superheroes, right?
Yeah, that's
so. What's your origin story?
Nobody asked me that generally. I was raised by a blind single mother on Social Security disability in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It was me and my little brother. And I used to think we grew up rough. And then I had a business mentor who, when I think I was 20 years old, he took me to Egypt on a trip. And I saw these like 5-6-year-old kids, street kids, living on the streets, begging for money. And I was like, oh no, I had it just fine. But for, the first 2 decades of my life, I had this huge chip on my shoulder, just about being a broke kid and where I came. You can see how quickly I rattled that off. Blind, single mother, Social Security disability, Albuquerque, New Mexico. But it had an impact. There's a scarcity mindset, I think, that sets in when you're. Oh, my wife just broke in to bring me my coffee. Thank you, my love. So there's a scarcity mindset that sets in, and so much of that I think is environmental, and it's accepted. It's adopted. You don't have to have it. And I've noticed that there are a powerful few who are either immune to it or choose not to be poisoned. And I wasn't one of those. I had to work my way out of that pretty tough. But
what was it that First of all, what kind of alerted you to the fact that it even existed? You know, because belief sets are things that are invisible. So we don't know we have them until we kind of bump up against something that says, and makes us challenge that. Was it something that made you realize this is holding me back? My perspective on the world is limited in a way, or was it? What was that kind of pivotal point for you?
It's a good question, man. I've thought a lot about this actually. I just lucked out.
Hmm.
Had I not had the opportunity I had, I'd probably still be in Albuquerque, and maybe I'd have done okay. I'd be like managing a Denny's. You know what I mean? Like that in Albuquerque, you're the man. Like if you're doing, I'd have like a condo and a car paid off. Like I'd be, you know, king of the hill.
You'd have
Um,
a Dodge Charger managing
that's right.
Denny's,
Yeah, managing a Denny's, and I'm not trying to disparage anybody that manages a Denny's. By the way, I'm not throwing shade, but
right?
I will say that there's just a limitation to your thinking when you're in a certain environment. I
Mm,
am disparaging Albuquerque, by the way. It's a shithole. Never go. It's horrible. Uh, I I I called my dad. I was 19 years old.
mm,
Um, I was very pathetically, and I'll emphasize this, very pathetically trying to play thug
mm,
and not doing it very well. I'm 9 foot tall, 120 pounds, soaking wet. There are toddlers that could take me out with one punch. But that's for whatever reason where I had aligned my value system. And
mm,
what got a little scary is, if you ask for something one too many times, maybe you'll get it.
mm,
And and so I just ended up in this environment and in this circle where, I looked around and I was like, wow, this is for real. These dudes are for real, and everybody means business, and I am definitely a Charlotte. I am full. I don't belong here. So, I couldn't. I was writing checks I couldn't cash, and so I called my dad. I didn't have a great relationship with my dad up to that point,
mm,
for various reasons. Not all of them his fault. Uh, but I called him and I said, "Hey, man, I'm in a bit of trouble. I went to a last chance school. It's called Southwest Secondary Learning Center. It's where they took all the kids that had been kicked out of all the other schools and they put us in a room together to collaborate. And the guy who started the school, his name's Scott Glassroot. He's now in federal prison. You can Google him. So it was
wow.
just like it was a joke. The whole thing was a joke, and I'd pissed away the entire latter half of my teen life just in this weird pursuit of an ethic and a virtue that I didn't even know that I subscribed to, as much as it was just the dominance hierarchy that was put in front of me, which makes
Mm,
me a sheep, really. So I'm in this situation. I just called my dad and I was like, "Hey, I'm in some trouble." And my dad had moved to Scottsdale, I don't know, 4 years prior, because my,
mm,
my father sells hand knotted rugs, area rugs. Like you import area rugs from India and Pakistan. They're super expensive, and you have to be in a wealthy place in order to make that work.
mm,
So he moved to Scottsdale, and he's like, "Well, come out and live with me." And so then I come from, you know, Albuquerque, New Mexico, to Scottsdale, Arizona, and I'll tell you,
mm.
man, it was just, you know, uh,
Night and day.
yeah. It was an unbelievable paradigm shift, and I didn't know how to walk, how to speak, how to interface with people. In Albuquerque, like if you walk in to a gas station, the way you interact with a gas station attendant is actually mildly combative. Like there's a playing the dozens kind of. There's a like I can say something kind of, like you just let people know, like you occupy your space and you enter a room. And in
Mhm,
Scottsdale, everybody's like, "Oh my goodness, you are mean," Like I had to figure out like, oh, okay, this is clearly not how we're going to operate in this. So I had to literally revise my accent, the way I spoke, the way it was again, it heralds to some level just being fake. But I
mm,
made a conscious decision between the ages of like 19 and 21, 22. I was just going to reinvent myself from the ground up, and I had the grace to be in a situation where I was able to do that. Um, and it's funny, man, because everybody wants to chase the whole title. Is like, oh, I'm a self-made man. And
right.
I don't think such a thing exists. If my dad
Mm,
hadn't pulled me out of Albuquerque, I'd still be some piece of shit trying to steal shit that wasn't mine, and play a game that I couldn't play. And there's other lines of demarcation there and trains of thought that can be followed along the same level of analysis. And my little brother didn't have it quite as lucky. He didn't get out, Sammy, and he ended up he spent 5 years on the streets, 5 years in a federal penitentiary, 4 yard, never PC'd up. He was a known cartel associate. That's a documented fact. You can Google him. And
Mm,
he's great now. He's been out 3 years. He's in great shape. He's doing very well. He runs a multi-million-dollar business. He's world famous in his industry. But he's
mm,
4 years behind me. And so I got to see, oh, this is what happens if you didn't get the escape hatch from daddy, you know?
mm.
And there's a healthy amount of guilt that can accompany that type of experience. But there's also a lot of gratitude, man. I had a lot of opportunities other people don't have.
It's funny you talk about that, because survivor's remorse is a real thing.
Mm,
When you're an entrepreneur, unless you come from a family of business owners and everybody in the family does the business, you're probably the only one, right?
yeah.
And so there's a healthy amount of, if you succeed, and get a certain amount of success, you're kind of having to, in a way, leave your family behind. It's hard to take them with you if they have not, gone on that personal development journey that's required to be successful. So how did you navigate those feelings, that I would imagine inevitably came up for you? Um,
Yeah, I'm still not done with that.
mm,
I'm deep in those waters, I think, in a lot of ways. It causes an existential crisis because there was a point,
mm,
I think this is every man in his 20s.
mm,
Every man in his 20s is going to go read Ayn Rand and decide like, oh man, if you work hard enough, you can do anything. It's just all about me and hustle and grit and whatever, and I'm stay hard and all that, and there's so much truth to that though. I'm not disparaging it.
mm,
I'm not. But now I'm a man in my 30s and I have children and I look at the world and I think to myself, I'll give you a handful of examples if you have the patience.
mm,
There's a young man that works for me. His name's Yvonne. Yvonne was born in I don't know where he was born, but he's from Kiev, Ukraine. And he's the smartest human I think I've ever encountered. He can do anything. And I found him on freelancer.com. He's going to college and he messaged me. He's like, dude, I need $1,000 a month to cover my nut. And if you pay me that, I'll do whatever you want. I'll be your EA. And that's how we started. And he's since ascended and climbed the ranks of my company. He's now our CTO. But I think about Yvonne. Yvonne was born in a country that just got attacked. He had 30 minutes to pack his shit and escape.
mm,
And like, what would that kid have if he was born where I was born?
mm,
Where he had relative security, opulence. I could have gone to University of New Mexico for free. Every single kid that lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, got to go to UNM for free on the lottery scholarship. Pissed it away. Didn't care. Meant nothing to me.
mm,
Like there's a gal that works for me in the Philippines, Julianne, smartest human in the whole wide world. She's a director of automations. Lost the geographic lottery. You ever been to the
mm.
Philippines? They don't make anything. If I pay someone in the Philippines $1,500, they're ecstatic. So I'm just in this really weird realm of understanding how lucky I am.
Yeah.
And I've been a pretty successful person, I think, at least in the ways that we all choose to keep score.
Mhm,
Uh, but the further up the ladder I climb, the more I realize that there's a lot that I should just look back and be like, man, and I don't have any theological commitments. I wish I did, but for
mm,
lack of another word, thank God. You know what I mean? Like I was just very grateful. So, I still bow at the altar of hard work because, I woke
mm,
up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I worked 12, 14, 15-hour days every single day for 15 years. And that'll make you $1 million. I guarantee it. I guarantee
mm,
it. You'll be 7, 8, 9 figure entrepreneur, guaranteed 100%. But to even have the luxury to do that, you have to be in a safe place. You have to
mm.
be, you have to, you know what I mean? You have to be in an environment where, you have air conditioning and you actually have access to the internet and more people have smartphones and toilets. And I feel like I'm hopping on
That's
a
true.
soapbox here, man. I'm so sorry that I did that to you.
No, no,
But
no.
yeah.
See, one of the things about this show that I like, and I try to take a different slant, is that to me, the thinking behind success is the most important part. A lot of people think it's the doing, right? But the doing you can emulate. But the
Mm,
thinking is the hard part because that's what allows you to actually execute at the level that you do. So you kind of sharing your thought process is helpful, I think, to a lot of people that are watching because then they get to see maybe it challenges the way that they see the world or they think about certain things or whatever. So I'm perfectly fine with that. So never you have to apologize for that. what I'm curious about is you got this new window, right? So you got this off ramp from Albuquerque, and now you're in your dad's world, and you're having to make these adjustments. And not everybody does, right? Because some people just say, "Well, this isn't me," or "This is pretentious." I don't belong here.
No, I
You
sold
decided
right out, man. I sold out. I was done. I was like, yeah, I'm happy to be here. I had my cardigan on. I had polished shoes. I'd walk slower, and yeah, I just changed everything about myself overnight. I was happy to do it.
what. So being in your dad's world, then was that where the entrepreneurial bug really started to bite you, or was there another like introduction that you had before that maybe just didn't seem realistic to you at the time that now you start to latch onto?
So my dad is he's an interesting guy. He's what I'd consider to be an alchemist. He can just turn nothing into money. The problem with my
Mm,
father though is it falls away from him as fast as he gets it. My
mm,
dad, and if he was on this call, I'd be having this conversation and he'd be laughing. He's had no respect for money his entire life, in a good and a bad way. Like he's so generous and he's so kind and he's so giving, but he's also just like, it's like it just bounces off of him. It's interesting to watch.
mm,
So I moved to Scottsdale, and his business is doing okay. He's in retail, so you got to be there
mm,
every single day. It's not a phenomenal quality of life,
mm,
but it's the wealthiest I'd ever been. And so all of a sudden, I'm getting used to like picking up the checks and doing everything that I do. And I started my own little business, and I thought I was doing okay at the time. And and then the financial collapse hit. And
mm,
so what's funny, the irony, and the thing that I think maybe I deserved for being such an epic sellout is, I escaped from Albuquerque, I escaped from poverty, and then I hit Scottsdale and I start my little business when I was 20 years old, and I'm making more money than 20-year-olds should make. And
mm,
and then the financial collapse come, and I had the house on the hill and the idiot's car, and I had $200 haircuts, and I always picked up the check. And then I realized when the economy turned, oh, I don't own these things. The bank owns these things, and they
mm,
were very quick to remind me of that. And so within a couple of years, I was right back to where I started. I was in this apartment building that I could only afford to get in. It was a $150 application fee, and I went to my dad for the money because I didn't have it. And my dad told
mm,
me, he was like, "Son, this is it. This is all I got. I'm trying to figure my thing out too." Because he
mm,
lost his house, his car, whatever. He ended up going to another city trying to start another store. It failed miserably. But my
mm,
dad's always been kind of a hustler that way. And so I'm in this apartment building, in this little apartment, not a bad one, but they were offering 3 months free if you sign an 18-month lease. So I gave them their $150, and I had 90 days. And I'm going to Costco on an expired Costco card, eating free tryouts. Like that's how I was feeding myself. And it was the most desperate I've ever been in my entire life. But it was the most important entrepreneurial lesson I've ever had,
mm,
because entrepreneurs have to understand the value of money. They have
mm,
to, and more than that, entrepreneurs have to understand the game that is money. Because
mm,
the very first thing I see young entrepreneurs do, every single one of them, man, it breaks my heart. They all go buy a car. Every single one of them, they go buy a damn car. And
mm,
some of them, I'm like, all right, you need to do that because I needed to do that, and it just is what it is, what it is. But I'm excited to meet you on the other end of what this ends up being for you, because I can tell you now, I have such a massive aversion to debt, and
mm,
my house is paid off, my cars are paid off. I could live the entire rest of my life not making another solitary dime, and I will be
mm,
able to feed my children. I don't have private jet money. I got beans and rice forever money though. And I'll tell you what it does for me is I have no existential concerns. Like I'm always going to be okay. So now I can
mm,
take risks other people can't take. I can
mm.
sit out an epoch other people can't sit out. I can
Right.
hire somebody other people can't hire because they're not ready yet. They need more time. They need more training. I can make. I'm liquid. I can make investments other people can't make in in environments that other people would be afraid to make those investments. And it's
Mm,
because I got so burned so bad. Uh, and thank God it happened when I was young, man, because I've seen people have to learn this lesson in their 30s and 40s. And I
mhm,
just realized like all that stuff on the outside, that didn't mean nothing. Like it was
mm,
worthless to me. And all the people that I thought were my friends, they weren't my friends at all. And the people that were my friends didn't care about any of it. And so if you're an entrepreneur, get used to the game of money, get good at it. And here's my rule for everybody, okay? If anybody cares to listen, you can only make extravagant purchases with the money your money makes you. You
mm,
only
Mhm.
make extravagant purchases with the money your money makes you. I like a lot of things. I like antique books. You can see behind me. This is not the room in the house with the most books. I like spending money on my kids. I like guns. I like a lot of weird, obscure, eccentric things. But I'll only make extravagant purchases with the money my money makes me. Time for money is a horrible trade. Time's a
Mhm.
non-renewable resource. If you're talking about money your time makes you, you save that and invest that.
Yeah.
And you get to a point to where your money's making you money. And now, if you want a Ferrari, Lamborghini, I'm not here to wealth shame. Have at it, man. God bless you. That's great. It's actually not even that hard. Like if you see somebody running around in a supercar, it's $2,500 a month. Like really
Mhm.
wrap your head around. That's $2,500 a month. Maybe it's like top of the line, this, that, whatever, $5,000 a month, whatever it ends up being. But it's not insurmountable. It's not inaccessible. Uh, but it's as soon as you can kind of back out of it and realize like, oh, it's kind of not that big a deal. But $5,000 a month, if that's money that your time is making you, I don't care how much you bill your hourly. It's an inefficient trade. It's a massively inefficient trade. And I think that if people can operate according to that set of rules, man, it's made all the difference for me.
Mhm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's really sound advice, especially coming from somebody who's experienced it and lived it so deeply. What was the business that you had at first?
It's funny, man. I wanted to be an actor. That was my sad, pathetic little passion. And so I wanted something that I could do from set, because you're out on set and you're wherever you are.
Mhm.
And so I was like, why? I need something I can do from anywhere from my laptop. And so I thought like, oh, I'm going to outsource, right? Because that was a buzzword at the time. Back in the day, nobody knew what outsourcing was. And
Mhm.
so I would just go find offshore suppliers and I'd try to sell their stuff. So I tried like medical and legal transcription and that failed. I tried outsourcing mortgage processing and that failed. And I ended up outsourcing software development. And that actually kind of hit because, people like and some of this might have, again, just been luck. But I ran into a couple of people that needed little apps built. I ended up building a banking application for the largest privately held bank in the United States, actually.
Hmm.
And I started doing okay. And it was a great little model. It was like, all right, you need software built. I go talk to this dude over here, figure out what he's going to charge me. I'll double it, triple it, quadruple it, 10x the price, whatever I feel I can get it. And now I'm just a proxy for communication. And that's a little tougher to do today.
Mhm.
But we're talking, I'm old now. We're talking quite some time ago. And at the time it was really tough to get software built. And so,
Yeah.
um, I was doing really well. But when the economy collapsed, one, I had a very large receivable, and the organization that went down, I would have been at the bottom of their list. So I just knew I wasn't going to get paid that. And
Mhm.
so I ended up having to lay off everybody that worked for me in a day. I had to let them all go that day. And that's another thing to think about too when you're entrepreneurs. You start to grow. I'm closing in on 100 employees now,
Mhm.
and that whole thing like, oh, we're family and whatever. I'm like, that's bullshit. But but you have such a responsibility to those folks to be someone that's solvent and
Mhm.
capable, and you can fulfill on your obligations. And dude, I just lucked out that I was even able to make payroll before I had to let everybody go.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was a good bullet dodged, good lesson learned, and I'm glad it happened when I was young, like I was saying.
So how long did it take you before you launched into the next thing, and how did you decide what that next business was going to be?
Dude, that's what's funny is I'd love to tell you that I like bootstrapped up. I was sitting in a bathtub full of gasoline lighting matches. Like I was so depressed. I was just smoking a pack a day, just drowning myself in Newports, and I started trolling Craigslist. My little brother was still doing what my little brother was out doing, and he
Mhm.
was having whatever tough time he was having, and I was trying to take care of him a little bit, and so
Mhm.
he lived with me, which was a difficult situation, and so if it was just me, I bet you I would have, you have your internal thermometer. I bet you I would have dipped a little bit further, but I had a brother who I felt largely responsible for a lot of the issues that he was going through.
Mhm.
And so I knew I had to make rent. And so I start trolling Craigslist for website maintenance work. And I'm doing that because I'm good with a computer. I know, I could get behind WordPress and update some content. And people would post to Craigslist at the time. Again, I'm old. So this is back when Craigslist was still a thing. People post to Craigslist or I'd post to Craigslist and just say, hey, I can help fix your website, make an update, HTML, whatever.
Mhm.
And I'm doing stuff for little ad hoc, $25, $50, and just get fed money. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, today I probably would have been driving an Uber. It's like, what's the thing that just gets it going? And as I'm doing this web work, I start hearing people ask me over and over and over again all the time, like, hey, how do I get my website found? And I'm like, I don't know. Best of luck to you. I don't have time for your problems. I'm sad, lonely, and depressed. I got to go over here and drown myself in my sorrows. And it was only a matter of time till I'm like, man, that sounds like an opportunity to me. So I started playing the SEO game a little bit. And again, I did what I always do. I just found somebody that was good at it offshore. And I started outsourcing to them. It was Shamim Rajani at Genetech Solutions. She and I are still friends. Amazing woman. Amazing. She's a female CEO in Pakistan, which is a very difficult country to be a female anything in. And I think she's got 100 some odd employees now, and she runs a thing called Code Girls, where she helps take women and teaches them how to be engineers. She's brilliant, and I found her, and I think she was doing some of my web work first, actually. But I asked her, I was like, "Hey, can you do SEO?" And at the time, SEO was just link building. It was link building and keyword fluffing. She's like, "Yeah." So she'd charge me like $100 a month, and I'd charge somebody a couple $100 a month. But that got me into this whole the recurring revenue thing, man. The minute that bug bit me, I was like, "Oh my God." You mean this just shows, because it's as hard to sell $500 one time as it is to sell $500 a month. Like, and I'm not being hyperbolic. Those two sales processes they're the exact same, and the objections are the exact same, and the pressure on the threshold and the resistance is the exact same. But when you break through on the $500 one time, you got to go do that again. On that $500 a month, you get that forever. And so I got bit by that bug, and I started doing websites and SEO, and that was kind of the advent of my marketing career.
So the company was called Solutions 8 from the beginning?
No, it was called KPO Global, Knowledge Process Outsourcing. That was a buzzword too. And I met a gal who she was a client of mine. I was her vendor, and she ended up being my biggest client. And so we ultimately just decided to merge, which it wasn't a very good partnership for a bunch of reasons, but I'm glad it happened because I learned a lot from her. And so she and I merged, I think in 2010 or 11, and then I ended up buying her out in 2014. And so, my company plus her company created Solutions 8, and then I bought her out and ended up just being the sole Solutions 8 guy. And we're called Solutions 8 because we had 8 core service offerings. We were doing like web, software, video, SEO, content, PP. Like, we were good at everything. So we said, and that wasn't true. But I thought I could be. It was one of those lies you tell yourself. And after I bought her out, I ran it myself for a little while with a handful of employees. Like, when I bought her out, I think we had 14 employees or so. We were, of a certain size. It's a horrible size, by the way. Like, it's right around there where you make less money and you have more responsibility. And so I ended up, there was a young man that used to, he was my client. Him and his dad had this really awesome company that they'd run for 10 years. And he was the worst client I'd ever had in my entire life. He was horrible. He was so tenacious. I remember one time in particular, I owed him, I don't remember what I owed him. We were doing a website build for him, I think. And I told him, I'd like, I'll have the mock-up for you at, Friday at 10. And I didn't have it. And so Friday at 10:01, I get an email, and I ignored that email. So then I got a phone call, and I ignored that phone call. So I got a text message. I ignored that text message. And then all of a sudden I'm in my office, and I look over, and there's somebody knocking on my door, and it's John. And I'm like, this dude, like, are you, and he drove the 20 minutes down from Deer Valley Airport over to my office. And he's like, hey man, just checking in on that deliverable. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have it. I was ignoring you. And he laughed and I laughed, but I was just like, you're the most tenacious human I've ever known in my entire life. And as his vendor, it was difficult to deal with, but I just remember how much I envied his grit and his tenacity. And so his business ends up getting taken down by a bad investor. Investor tries to steal the IP. There's a whole litigious thing, kills the business. So he ends up and he gets a sales job, does great. He's the number 1 sales guy at the organization the very first month he's there. But he's working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And this is a man with a wife and 2 little girls. I think at the time he only had 1 little girl. And I just knew, I was like, this is going to wear him down. So I called him up. I was like, hey man, why don't you come work with me? And he told me what he needed to make. And I was like, well, I can't pay you half that. So, but I just stayed in, that's the one thing I might be good at, man, is just finding people that are way smarter than I am to come help me. And I just stayed in front of him. And I think I caught him at the right time, because 3 months into it, he was like, dude, I never see my wife. I never see my babies. He's like, what's the best you can do? And I gave him the best that I could do, which was still probably about half of what he was making at the other place, but at least I, offered some freedom.
Mm,
And then I told him, I was like, look, if I'm going to pay you this, we've probably got about 60 days. And, I might
mm,
have been lying a little bit just to manage expectations. Maybe it was 90, but I was paying him more than I had been paying myself. And he
wow.
came in and he's the reason that Solutions 8 exists. He's the one that identified Google Ads is the highest performing. He figured out that, well, dude, if we run Google Ads for people, everybody that's successful is successful with Google Ads first. And it makes sense because you take your customer, you throw them in the Coliseum with all their competitors, and you see if they can come out alive.
Mm,
And if they do, it's like, well, then you'll probably do great at all these other things because I know you have an offer that people want. I know you actually answer your phone. I know you have a fulfillment process. I know that you have pricing that makes sense. So I love it when people are like, oh, I'm going to test Google Ads. I'm like, no, you're not. Google's going to test you.
mm,
Like this is somebody says, hey, Google, I want exactly what the hell this dude sells. And I put you in front of them and they don't buy. Whose fault is that? You know what I mean? Like,
wow.
right? Like it's
Yeah.
the ultimate match from a continuity perspective. So, and people don't like hearing that. They don't like hearing like, hey, you're not charging enough or you're charging too much. Or by the way, your sales guy didn't answer 30% of the phone calls or he answered them poorly or you're not
Mm,
ascending well enough or your lifetime value isn't high enough, whatever it ends up being. But John identified Google Ads was the ultimate litmus test. And so we didn't initially try to niche down into Google Ads. We were just going to use it to see which clients we invest in for broader endeavors. And over time, we just got so damn good at it, we became the Google Ads agency. But it's another example, man, of, if I didn't have John, if I hadn't,
mm.
like stalked him and talked him into coming and working for me, like I wouldn't have this. It's just luck. It's just grace, blessings, whatever you want to call it. I'm just so grateful.
One thing I get as a sense of listening to you is just like this tremendous humility. Like I, I, I
It's
agree
well
with you.
earned, Frederick, I'll tell you.
Well, I was gonna make a joke that I could see why you would make a bad thug because you're so humble.
Yeah.
But it also feels like a real skill set because you talked about it. You touched on it just a second ago. Like the ability to identify people who are smarter than you. A
Mm,
lot of times, entrepreneurs, our ego won't allow us to say that person could come and work and make our company better because, of course, it has to be about us. Like
right.
that's the whole point of having a business. If I can't validate I'm a Superman or a Superwoman, then what's the point, right? But is there is there something that you maybe find in common besides your humility, besides the ability to step back and just evaluate a person? But is there something you can identify in people that allows you to say they're going to be great at this? I need to have them on the team.
Dude, I've got a whole process for this. I call it the Pareto talent system. It took me about 15 years to develop.
Hmm.
I'm not pitching anything because it's not something I sell, but I've got a YouTube video. It's about an hour long where I walk people through exactly how I do this step by step.
Wow.
And there's a couple of keys there, and I'll give away the easy button, and then I'll send you this link. And if you want to share it, you can.
Yeah, please.
Um, First key, and I had learned this the hard way because entrepreneurs like to get people for as little as they possibly can and squeeze as much as they can out of them. The first key is you have to pay more and give more than anybody else is willing to pay or to give
Hmm.
because you want a peak performer. There's nothing more expensive than a cheap employee.
Hmm.
Nothing more expensive than a cheap employee. And here's the interesting thing about peak performers, and this is a statistical truism, by the way. A peak performer doesn't do 10% more. They do 5 or 10 times more. That's the
Hmm.
Pareto distribution. People think the Pareto distribution is 80-20. It's not. The Pareto distribution is the square root of the total participants own half. And if you're talking about
Wow.
10 people, that's, 3 people own 50%, which isn't that big a deal. But you're talking about 1,000 people. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
like you end up in a situation where that Pareto distribution is huge. It's staggering. And if you want the best of the best of the best of the best of the best, if you want a John Moran or an Yvonne Boonin or Julianne, my automations manager, anybody who works for me, my staff, everybody who ever comes in an organization is like, where do you find these people? The first
Hmm.
thing I do is I pay more than anybody else is willing to pay. And here's the thing. We're not Fortune 100 company. So you might say, well, dude, I can't afford to do that. Well, that's why you don't go to Silicon Valley and hire out of Silicon Valley. The
Hmm.
world is flat now, to quote
Right.
Thomas Friedman. I'm not a flat earther. But dude, I've got like Yvonne, my CTO is a kid from Ukraine. My automations
Hmm.
manager is a young lady from the Philippines. We just hired our very first Google Ads specialist from, where the hell is he from? Um, I think he might be from Kenya. Uh, the gentleman that is responsible for the most specialist referrals I have is from Venezuela, which a lot of
Mm,
people won't hire from Kenya or Venezuela because there's so much like, oh, the Prince of Nairobi's trying to scam me here, and there's all these like internet whatever farms there, and I'm finding the best people in the world. Here's the thing about like Philippines. I'll use the Philippines as an example because I think the Filipino labor force is unbelievable.
mm,
$500 a month is a good salary in the Philippines. $500 a month, U.S.
mm,
You pay $1,500 a month, you can get a triple PhD. And you
mm,
can't tell me for a fraction of a second that there aren't people in the Philippines that are capable of being CEOs, CFOs, CAOs, COOs. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
what are they dumber than we are? You know what I mean? So we've just taken all offshore labor and decided that, oh, you can do grunt work,
Hmm.
but you can't, like you can't do what I can do.
Right.
And I just, for whatever reason, never adopted that prejudice. And I started finding, or maybe I did, and I just started finding out that I was wrong. I don't know. I don't know how the evolution happened, but I have got the best people in the world. One of the gentlemen that works for me and is one of our Google Ads strategists, I pay him 6 times what his peers would make being a Google Ads strategist. 6 times. Imagine making six, if the average salary in San Diego for an entry level, whatever, is 100 grand and you're making $600,000, imagine what that would do. It's insane. But I have the best people in the world. Now, here's the thing is
Mm,
when you're paying that and you put that job posting up, you get so many submissions that are overwhelming. So you have to make it impossibly hard for them to even get through the jump through the hoops. And in the Pareto talent process, I'll explain, that I do explain inside of the YouTube video, my job description at the very top, it says, make sure that your subject line reads, I actually read the instructions. And then
mm,
I've got all these little fly traps with instructions. And I ask them things like, send me your resume in this file format with this nomenclature. If I don't get your resume in a PDF file, and I actually say, send me a link to your resume, not an attachment, because I don't want to get hit by spam.
mm,
And then I want this nomenclature. So this is the naming convention. If I don't get that, you're out. You can't pay attention close enough. I'm paying 3x, and you can't. And then I'll ask things like, one of my favorites is, there's a quote by Khalil Gibran that I really love. He's a Lebanese poet, and he says, "Work is love made visible." And I'll ask,
mm,
what does this quote mean to you? If you were an animal, what animal would you be? Um, there's a couple of others that are kind of situation dependent. And then when I get those responses, most of them I can throw away because most people don't even say I actually read the instructions. The people that do didn't actually read the instructions. And then from there, I look at the formatting. Is this easy to engage with? And
mm,
after I've made my short list, I still don't interview them. I send them a trial project. But there's a couple of notes here too. I pay them to do the trial project because I want them to know I respect your time and I'm not going to take advantage of you. And I pay them in advance. I don't pay them a ton of money, but I say,
mm,
what's your PayPal address? And I'll send them $20. And I'll say, here's $20. And then, if you're a Google Ads specialist, create the strategy for me. If you're a copywriter, write this blog for me. If you're, whatever. If you're a salesperson, build this outbound prospecting list for me. Here's what's crazy. People ghost me for the $20. So imagine this. I just paid $20 to learn that you have no integrity. And I got to
yeah,
do that before I brought you into my organization and put a fox in the henhouse. So once I have the trial project, at that point, I usually have a very good indication of who it is I'm going to work with. From there, I send them an email that teaches them how to book a call with me, and I make it hard. Oh, in the trial project, I'll do stuff like, hey, you need to log into this Canva profile in order to capture these assets. I send them the wrong username and password, and then I wait and see how long it takes for them to tell me, hey, by the way, the password's not up to date. And then I'll tell them, I won't tell them when I want the project. I'll say, you tell me when you think this will be delivered because I want to see if they can manage expectations and communicate. And then I ask them, how long did this take you? Because I want to see, like, are you going to lie about your hours? So, like, there's just a lot of little things. By the time we get to the interview, if I still have too many people, I'll do a couple of things. Like I'll cancel the appointment 60 seconds before the interview. And then I just want to see how they handle that. Are they going to snap at me? Are they going to reschedule? Are they going to follow up? But anyway, this is 15 years worth of build out, dude. This is like robust as hell. By the time you get to the end of it, I've
mm,
got assassins. The
yeah.
only people this process doesn't work on are salespeople. I cannot hire salespeople. Salespeople don't jump through hoops. They're used to like breaking the rules. You know what I mean? So anyway, I hope that wasn't boring. That's my hiring process.
No, no, no. First of all, that's golden. I think if you're an entrepreneur now, because short of hiring a headhunter, right, or an agency, That's one of the biggest things that people complain about. I can't find the right talent. But what you're saying is that you were willing to, of course, it took you 15 years to figure it all out, but you were willing to jump through the hoops, create the hoops yourself
Right.
for them to jump through, which is something that not everybody's willing to do. They just want the problem to be solved. So they'll go out and find maybe not the easiest solution, but the next to easiest solution. So I mean, that says a lot about why you're able to be so successful. And we don't even have enough time to really dive into all the questions I really have, but
Sorry, man.
no, it's okay. I mean, I'm thankful for the time, but as you're talking, more questions come up. So what I'm curious about is you've hired the best people. That's turned you into getting the best results. But what is your philosophy around Google Ads and marketing in general, right? Because it is a buzzword. There's a ton of marketers out there, people who say they do marketing, say they're great at it. Some people actually are. But there has to be a perspective, a lens through which you see this process of acquiring customers. What how would you define that if you have a template or something or a framework that you see it through?
Give first, give last, give more. I'm a paid traffic guy telling you that you should never pay for traffic.
Mm,
Do what you're
mm,
doing here. Look what you're doing here. You're building a community. You're providing value. You're not charging anybody for this, but you're building a brand and you're putting yourself in a position to create a well from which you can draw from forever.
mm,
My YouTube channel, same thing. I only have 13,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel, I think. Um, it produces higher quality leads than the 100 grand a month I spend in Google Ads.
mm,
My podcast, we get 300,000 downloads for my podcast. Again, it doesn't produce as many leads as my ad spend, but the leads, they know me. They know, they've seen my face, heard my voice. They trust me.
yeah.
If you really want to go out hardcore customer acquisition, be willing to give immense amount of value.
Mm,
And don't worry about like, oh, well, if I give away the secret sauce, they're going to do it themselves. I'm here to tell you, I promise you that's not true. I promise. All that's going to happen is you're going to be like, okay, that makes sense. Can you please do this for me? Can you please
mm,
do this for me? People don't, and the people that are going to do it themselves, we're never going to hire you anyway. So at
right.
least you get to be the one first to market to go and say, here's how this is done. Don't build a course. Don't gate it. Don't try to play the if this, then that, whatever. Like, I mean, how many intimate relationships have you had with a vending machine? Have you ever had a vending machine that you loved? Have you ever felt like a dedicated responsibility to a vending machine? If there's a vending machine that is 1 second closer to me, I'm going to go to that vending machine, right? So every time you've ever played the put in $1 and get some bullshit out game with anybody, you just
Mm,
became a vending machine. But think
yeah.
about the people there's a couple of people on your phone right now that if they called you during this call, you'd be like, hey man, I'm so sorry. I know I'm alive. I have to jump. And
Yeah.
it's because on some level, they've cultivated a relationship with you that warrants that type of response. And what's
Right.
crazy about the internet is you can do that with scale. You can do that
Mm,
at scale. You can invest in people at scale. And it's such an amazing blessing, dude. And people are so important. Like what an understatement that is. Like it's at the fundamental core of every religion in existence. People are so important, and we can invest in people at scale. And business in a lot of ways just turns into loving on people. I teach my
mm,
children that money is a representation of the value provided to other people. And it's been, maybe that's naive and maybe that's quixotic. I don't think it is, but it's been true in my life. And so, if you want customer acquisition, then put yourself in a position to serve the people that you ultimately want to pay you, and then sit back and watch it happen. And it takes
mm,
time, but it doesn't take that much time. Go shoot. I learned this from my buddy Uzair. The only reason I have a YouTube channel is because of Uzair. Shoot a video a day for 90 days. Shoot one video a day for 90 days. It's not that hard. It takes 10 minutes a day.
mm,
And in 90 days, bet money you're the world authority on whatever the hell it is you're shooting your videos on, as long as you niche down, because nobody else wants to do the work. You can
mm,
pick any topic you want to, shoot a video a day for 90 days, and you don't even need to know the topic. Go learn it. And then every day, just teach people what you're learning. 90 days
mm,
later, dude, I could right now, I swear to God, in 180 days, I could make myself a world authority on blockchain or crypto or NFTs, because nobody wants to do that damn work. And I would just go to school on it, spend an hour and a half, 2 hours learning, reading, watching, whatever, and then I'd shoot a video on what I learned. And I'd be humble and I'd be authentic and I'd be transparent, and people would be like, that's what I've been dying for. Because every blockchain, crypto, NFT video I've ever seen has been weird, cryptic, no pun intended,
Mhm.
opaque, and then they
Yeah.
always gate some shit. If I were to just give it all away, 90, 100, 180 days later, I've got this great little solid little community. And then I could say, hey, if I launched a membership, would y'all be in? You know what I mean? Now all of a sudden I have a monetization model.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not trying to talk people out of Google Ads because I run Google Ads for a living, but they're great for scale. They're great if you've got a big business and you want to spend 100 grand a month or 10 grand a month, whatever. But if you're a small business owner and just getting started out, go build a community. Go serve first, and that's going to be the well from which you can draw forever.
No, that's golden. I think that's so true. It's funny. I had George Bryant on the podcast, and he talked a lot about relationship and building out the customer journey or whatever. And you're just talking about this particular aspect of just serving. I'm curious, was it something, a realization that you came to? Not that you thought that people weren't valuable before, but how did that evolve into the ethos that you really feel is laced inside the company now?
It's a great question. I don't know the answer to. I think I tried as a young entrepreneur again. I just thought I could treat people like cogs. And to be honest with you, that's kind of how we're taught. Like you
Mm-hmm.
go buy a management book and it's like, oh, and then you buy, a grunt and you put them here, and you buy a middle manager and you put them there, and you buy a director and you put them there. And it doesn't matter who they are, what they are, when they are. Like you just put them on the assembly line and you set them loose. And there was such a difference in the people that I would work with and that I would hire. And I think the thing that I do really well is I'm able to identify skills in other people that I don't even think they can identify themselves. You know what I mean? Like if you give me a day with somebody, I'm going to sit back and be like, Jesus, you are amazing at this. And then the other thing that I do too is there's that whole like, don't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. I'll tell you a story about my now business partner, John Moran, who, when I first hired him was just an employee, and he got so important I had to give him equity so he wouldn't go away. John does not follow standard operating procedures. John will not, cannot ever. It's against, there's something about, I don't know if it's a tick or he's, something, but if you're like, hey man, anytime you do this, I need you to, go into the project management tool and mark this off and change this setting. He just will not do that bullshit. So here I have the smartest Google Ads mind on the planet. I swear to God, this is true. And he has this weird aversion to, what are they called in office space, TCM reports or whatever. Like he just won't do the damn thing. And what most people would do is they'd sit there trying to fix him. What I did was I fixed the process. And now the rule is, well, John doesn't have to do that at all. John is a damn, you know what I mean? Like he's the savant. He's going to, if you've got a dude that will always run the ball down the field and always get the goal, but he can't do this type of conditioning or whatever, lose the conditioning. Like don't put yourself at the subject of your own romantic notions about what certain things mean. And I've done that for a lot of folks. Like I'll hire somebody for this role and they'll have a couple of weak points. And instead of trying to fix those weak points, I'm not telling you I don't coach people because I think you should. But sometimes it's like, man, you really suck at this, but you're great at these things. Why don't we just make that the job? You know what I mean? Like, why sit here and try to get this person to lift weights they can't lift when they're a long distance runner? Let's just let you go do that. And I don't know, man. I don't know where the people are important thing came from, but I'll tell you, it's made all the difference for me. And at the risk of sounding, I might be Michael Scott or Bill Lumberg and just not know it. I could just get laughed at behind my back all the damn time. But I've got some loyal people. I got a young lady. She was the director of my marketing department. She was offered a salary that she didn't tell me the exact number. I'm pretty sure it was double. She was offered a salary by a way bigger agency. It was damn near double. She didn't tell me. A year later, they came back and she's like, Kasim, they just upped this offer. I was never going to bring it to you. And I was like, Patience, you should take this. This is amazing. Like, I'm so proud of you. You know what I mean? This is awesome. And I could never afford to pay you anything even close to this. And you've earned it and you're amazing. You're unbelievable. She's the reason that we're ranked number one organically. But like for a year, this poor girl went suffering in silence because she was loyal to me and what I was doing. And I think it's because I've given people the ability to kind of just like, go live in their power. So that got real preachy too. I've done a lot of preaching today, Frederick. I don't know how I
Hey,
feel about this, but you're a good interviewer, man. I appreciate you giving me some space to just talk.
no, it's fascinating, man. I knew that I was going to be fascinated by our conversation together, and I'm really glad we did it. And we're getting close to wrapping up, but I'm curious about the evolution of you as a leader, because that's clearly what you are. You think like a leader, you talk like a leader. You don't talk like just an entrepreneur who runs a business, who has some employees and does some cool stuff, right? Has a great product, whatever. But have you been conscious? And I know that you've mentioned mentors that you had, but have you been conscious of the process of your growth as a leader through the growth of your company? I just want to know kind of your thoughts on that.
I think the most important lesson I've ever learned for myself is the value of truth.
Mm,
Um, and truth is it's a real easy concept to champion on a call like this. It's a tough concept to champion when you're on a call with somebody and you're explaining to them why you're letting them go, or why they didn't
mm,
get the job, or why they're not performing. And it's so tempting to water it down or to take off the sharp edges. And I've just gotten really good at using the truth. It's a sword and a shield. I think it's the most important thing. Full stop, man. I think it's the most important thing. I teach my children. It's on my website right now too. Our core values are truth, responsibility, and heart. And by heart, I really mean love. But people don't like the word love. It has some preconceived notions, so we can call it heart. But people think that love is the most important thing, and I disagree with that, because love without truth is blind, and love without responsibility is impotent. So I think, hierarchically structured, I think truth is the most important thing. Responsibility is the second most important thing, and then you can have love. But I
wow.
think truth, man. I was a I can't say the word pathological. What would I say? I was addicted to lying from the ages of 7 to 22. It's so easy when you can bend the fabric of reality and just say whatever the hell you wanted to say. You know what I mean? Like, nah, I didn't do that. Or that was me. I just make myself sound cooler, have a better story than you, one up, whatever. But it becomes and I've read that you can't break yourself against a principle. You can't break a principle. You can only break yourself against a principle. So I can't break truth, but I can break myself against truth. And it's
Mm.
so costly. It's so deadly. And so I think the thing that I've maybe, and again, it's just because I failed so miserably at it for so long. Um, but the thing I'd credit some of my success with is I'm just rabid about just telling the truth, you know, and I think people really appreciate that. Even if it's not comforting in the moment, they're like, all right, well, at least that dude didn't lie to me.
Kasim, I can't thank you enough, man. I've been really, really blessed since we're going with the whole gospel theme here of preaching. I think it's really been a blessing. I think it's been really rich, and I'm grateful for your time. I know you got to jump here soon. Tell everybody where they can find you, how they can connect with you if they want to learn more about what you're up to, Solutions 8, whatever you got going on.
Yeah. Well, if you can't find me online, don't listen to anything that I'm talking about, because I'm obviously not good at my job. My company is SOL, the number 8.com. You can find me on socials at Kasim Aslam across all channels. And I shoot a YouTube video every day. So you can go to my YouTube channel, just search for Solutions 8. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man. This is the exact right thing to be doing. I love the community building.
I appreciate it, Kasim. Thanks for stopping by. I know we got to jump. For everybody else who's been watching, we had a lot of great comments in the thread as well. Um, Thanks to all of you, and as always, ever forward.
Appreciate you, man.